Welcome. I'm James Shore, and this is the Art of Agile Development Book Club. Today, we're discussing customer involvement, specifically the planning game, real customer involvement, and incremental requirements. To get us started, I'm going to read an excerpt from the Art of Agile Development. As a reminder, the second edition is out now on both ebook and print editions, and you can get it from Amazon by visiting jamesshore.com/s/buy AOAD2 for Art of Agile Development 2, or you can find excerpts and bonus material by visiting jamesshore.com/s/AOAD2. Real customer involvement. We understand the goals and frustrations of our customers and users. I once worked with a team that was building software to analyze mass spectrometer data. The team's domain expert was a chemist whose previous job involved using the company's old software. She was invaluable, full of insight about what did and didn't work with the old product. We were lucky to have her as a member of the team. Thanks to her, we created a more valuable product. In an Agile team, on-site customers, team members with the skill to represent customer, user, and business interests, are responsible for choosing and prioritizing stories. The value of the team's work is in their hands. This is a big responsibility. As an on-site customer, how do you know what to choose? Some of that knowledge comes from your background and expertise, but you can't think of everything. You can get so caught up in daily details that you lose track of your real customers' interests. To widen your perspective, you need to involve real customers and users. The best approach to doing so depends on who you're building the software for. Feedback and iteration. Agile's emphasis on feedback is one of the biggest reasons for its success. It's incredibly difficult to predict how software will be received. It's even difficult to imagine how it will work in practice. As a result, teams often find that the first release of their software has unexpected flaws. Not bugs exactly, but misunderstandings about what needs to be done. Prior to Agile, teams could take years to produce their first release. When the inevitable flaws were discovered, it was too late and too expensive to make changes. Agile's revolutionary idea was to release software in the first month and frequently thereafter, allowing mistakes to be discovered and corrected early. Prevent mistakes by seeking out as much feedback as you can, as early as you can. Include customers, users, and business stakeholders in the planning process. Show them mock-ups. Ask them to comment on work in progress. Release working software in increments and observe how people use it for real. And then act on that feedback. Change your plans, make improvements, and iterate. Let's go ahead and get started with our first discussion prompt. Agile is all about feedback and direct communication. So what is your organization's approach to stakeholder feedback? Or if you're a consultant working with multiple organizations, what sort of approaches to feedback do you see? And how does that help or hinder the teams that you're on or work with? What I see in a lot of the teams that I work with is that in the early days of Agile, this idea of direct customer feedback, of showing real customers what was going on, was a big part of what people understood Agile to be. But as the years went on, and this was really hard for people with project management titles because they thought that that was their job and they saw themselves as people who should be in between the team and their customers, telling the team what to do, holding them to their holding them accountable to commitments, making sure things got done on time. In the years that passed, those project managers went away in theory. You don't really find anybody with a title project manager anymore, but you do find a lot of people with the title product owner who act just like those project managers did, who still see that their job is to be in charge of the team, to hold the team accountable for meeting deadlines, and to act as a go-between for the team and the people that the team is working with. And as a result, I still don't see in this sort of cargo cult Agile world that we live in today, I still don't see a lot of direct communication between supposedly Agile teams and their real customers and stakeholders. Even though I think that if you're not doing that, it's really hard to say you're truly an Agile team. David has a comment on this. David, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks, James. Taking the space to share a practice and maybe also ask a question in this space. I'm David from AfroLabs, Cape Town, South Africa. We sort of help support software development teams from here, so really great to be able to connect in. And one of our challenges is this thing, and one of our most challenging environment is we build a website for a not-for-profit called the Tape Aids for the Blind. They are like Audible for blind people, and volunteers record books, and then people download, either the blind person themselves or one of their family members helps them to download the books and then get them through. This has been quite a challenge for direct customer contact with the end user and really building empathy. But to share a practice that has worked is to get our UX researcher to conduct those interviews and ask if they can be recorded. And as he steps through them all, and then to bring them back to the dev team and allow them to play through, building comfort for the developers in understanding how the screen readers work and how those customers do those things. And doing about 5 custom interviews on a weekly basis across the user base. Just keeping that going is a fantastic replacement for testing and has helped build empathy there. So that's worked quite well. And on the flip side of that, I was really interested in if you have any successes or failures with this customer proxy idea, because I've heard aspersions or sturgeons being thrown about that, and I've never really tried the practice, so I'd be fascinated by how that's worked. But yeah, just wanted to share this idea of maybe lightening the load of trying to bring that customer in through research.
Yeah, thank you. I really love the way you said helps build empathy, because I think that's what teams need from with their customers, is empathy for what they do, and seeing how the customers react to the real world environment is definitely one way to do that. I would say that if your UX person is part of the team, then you do have real customer involvement in the team. I don't need every single person on the team talking to every single customer, or even any customers. I just need the team as a whole to have that ability in the team. Where I see the product owner idea go wrong is when they see themselves as sort of apart from the team and as acting as a go-between rather than facilitating those conversations like you're talking about, sort of taking charge of them. And I think Scrum has a lot of unfortunate names, and product owner is one of them. That ownership means I own it and you can't. So yeah, I'm sorry. The question you raised, it's escaped me. Can you say that again?
Sure. It was around customer proxies, and if you've seen them working, or is that generally like a warning
right
into here?
Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by that. Actually, it's the first time I'm hearing of the term. So what do you mean by customer proxies?
So my understanding of a customer proxy is of having someone who's as good as the customer in the team. I know John Cutlerfish has posted a bit about these notions on Twitter. That's how I became familiar with this idea, and I've chatted to 1 or 2 people about this idea. John Cutlerfish is his Twitter handle. Sorry. I think the idea is that getting a customer would be really hard, but let's get someone who really understands the customer well enough and put them inside the team. And I am throwing a lot of hand wavies on that to say, there's lots of reasons on my side that I think it may not work, but I've also had domain experts in a team who might be considered as that historically. So just fascinated if there's patterns and practices that's been evolving around that for you, James.
Got it. Thank you. Well, a couple people with their hands up, so they might have some thoughts on this customer proxy idea. I would say that it's not too unusual, just a different name for something that I think people have been doing for a while in Agile. I use the term on-site customer for sort of the same idea. But Michael has a comment. Michael, welcome to the show.
Hi. Hello again.
Hello.
If I understood correctly, I actually may be in that position. It's called, subject matter expert, or SME for short, where I work. And it's, due to the complexity of getting everybody together and especially getting real customers together, it's sort of like an envoy and a person who tries to understand what the customer is doing with the products, maybe work with them for a little bit, or have a similar background or stuff like that, and keep stay in communication, and then act as that kind of persona or source for answers within the team.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a little bit different from the product owner as well. As I don't necessarily define stories or anything like that, but I help to be there when the answers are needed.
Got it. Got it. And how well does that work for your team, do you think? I mean, it's hard for you to say, I imagine, since you're sort of in the middle of it, but does that work in your experience?
Yes, I think it does accelerate the development and the feedback. Though I also think it's helpful to connect the people with the real customers when that's necessary. So it's not, always just me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That sounds fantastic. Scott has a comment on this. Scott, welcome.
Yeah, going along with Michael just said, I led for our company, a very large development effort. Same thing. We had a subject matter expert. It's the first time that we basically had that individual who was embedded and a part of the team. And although we had a lot of discussions with our end customers, they're just as busy as we are. Like, they're not just going to give up part of their day to talk to us. They just didn't have time. We were lucky if we got a 1-hour phone call every couple of weeks or once a month with 2 or 3 of our key customers. The cautionary tale is that subject matter experts are typically experts in your application, and your end users are not. Mm-hmm. And so you can get, if you don't pay attention, you can get a very skewed view of what you should be working on and when you should be working on it, because what's important to your experts is not important to all of your customers, who are sometimes a long ways from being experts on purpose. In my case, this was a development of a very technical engineering application for labs, and the laboratories for years had been working down a path where they were actually almost like diminishing their expertise, because that's very expensive. And so they were more than happy to bring in college hires or individuals with less expertise. You don't have to have a PhD anymore, because we have software that does so much of this for us. And so we needed to meet the needs of people that had never used our application before, not experts. So having a subject matter expert who's on the team was great, because we could turn to somebody if we had a question that day. But I would tell people, if you have that, you have to continually validate what it is you're working on and when it's important for you to work on it with your actual customers.
That reminds me, the really successful Agile teams I've been on haven't actually had a single on-site customer or a single product owner, or a single subject matter expert. They've actually had a customer team within the team. For example, the story I was telling from the book excerpt, that was a company building mass spectrometers, and we were writing software to detect metabolites in the sample for drug production. And that team had a PhD chemist who was the product manager and really talking with customers, understanding what they cared about. They had a master's degree chemist who had actually used the tool in the field and was our on-site subject matter expert, sat with the team every day, every hour, was there with us. They had a user experience designer who was taking all these ideas and building the user interface designing the user interface for the system. And we had a technical writer who was writing the manual, and they all would work together to sort of decide the direction of the product and to work with the developers on the team to make this all come together well. And that was a serious investment, but it was an investment worth making to them, because they were number one in the market. But exactly the thing that you're talking about, Scott, was happening. It used to be that these mass spectrometers were used by PhDs to do very, very unique work, but it was becoming more and more commoditized. And now they had master's degree chemists who were using it, which still not, they're still well trained, but they're doing more repetitive work. And so their competitors had software that was easier to use. So they knew they had to target this market, and they took it really seriously, and it created great software as a result. I think it's that kind of investment that's needed to be really successful in an Agile team, not somebody who just shows up every couple of hours or for a couple of hours once or twice a week. Thanks very much for your comments, Scott. Jim, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Jim. As you know, this is a topic that I'm really passionate about. Many years ago, I had an opportunity to work with an organization that was building just an amazing product. They had a really short time to market. If they didn't get that, they'd miss the market opportunity. They were adopting Agile because they were struggling hitting the market in time. And I was working with them as a coach and trying to get the connection to the real customer. And we had these proxies or business domain experts. And I asked one of the managers when we couldn't get access to one of these people, why not? And he said, well, she's got a real job. And I was puzzled. I was really puzzled. I said, this is something that seems really, really important and really valuable. Why would this not be considered a real job? And the backstory was that every time they invested time and energy, either providing a business domain expert or connecting to the customer, then the end result was the product still arrived too little, too late. They'd been, SDLC, stretched out, heavy bureaucratic process. So from a business perspective, there was no return on investment. When they made these connections and they spent time, the real job was milking the cow, their existing products. That's how we make money, is we milk the existing products. Well, they were reaching an existential crisis in the organization that they weren't able to create new products and they were falling behind in the marketplace. So through the conversation, I asked, some basic coaching questions around, well, is this a worthwhile endeavor? And ultimately they determined it was. And so I said, well, if you miss this market window, what are you going to lose? And it turned out it was many, many, many millions of dollars that would be a lost opportunity. And I said, well, what's the time frame? They said 90 days. And I said, well, how about for 90 days? Just try an experiment. Try an experiment for 90 days. Bring one of these people that's doing a real job, have them join the team and, let's see what happens. And as you might expect, they were able to get the insights that they needed to build the right product and actually get it to market in time. So that started changing a perception of the dynamic or the relationship between these business domain experts, the business and IT. And I think that's part of Agile is tearing down that perceived barrier, maybe a wall between IT and the people who do the development, or the people who do the development in business. And really, we're all on the same team. So I think the larger context of this conversation is, how do we create our real team? Yeah. And ensure that we have everybody that's necessary. Those business domain experts are essential, parts of our team, whether it's a proxy or whether it's somebody that's an actual customer. I think it's a gamification of this, is to try to figure out what are the best people, whether they're technical or they're business, and getting them actually in the room. But I thought that was just amazing, that the real job, that there was just no real understanding that product development is actually a real job. There's so much disconnect between business and IT. And I think that's something we really need to focus on mending, as a community.
Yeah. Yeah. The story you're telling there of software is something that somebody else does. We have a software factory that builds our stuff for us.
We outsource all of that.
Yeah. It's such a common story. And I think you really hit the nail on the head. They've tried to invest in it and they haven't seen that return. I'm actually working with a company right now where I did some analysis of their system. And I said, well, here's some you got lots of complex things going on, but I think you've got some points of leverage here, here, and here. And addressing these points of leverage is going to require your product owner team to come on board. And I shared this with the VP in charge of the product owner, that they call it product strategy. And she said, well, I see this and I even agree with it, but we've tried this before and it's never worked out. So people are not going to be on board with this because they're going to say, what's different this time? And That was a hard question to answer.
Yeah, the fascinating thing here was that this individual that he provided at the end of the first iteration, and we're in the review meeting where we're looking at what was created by the team in that sprint, she began to cry. And the team had developed a relationship with her, during that work together, and they were concerned, and they were, what's wrong? She looked at them and said, tears of joy. I've never seen something that actually works.
Yeah.
It almost brings tears to my eyes right now. It was such an emotional moment that the reaction of that individual and seeing the impact that her engagement had, and also the caring from the rest of the team, that they had made a connection there and they really cared. And that really kind of gelled and brought them together as a team.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Rebuilding, there's broken trust, I think, between a lot of business people and development people on teams or in organizations. It's broken trust from just years and years of broken commitments on one side, or perception of broken commitments on one side, and perception of unfair expectations on the other. Wow. Thanks very much for sharing that story, Jim. I'd like to invite Harold to share his thoughts. Harold, welcome.
Being on this Agile journey, and I don't know, I'm guessing others have had this experience, but a lot of people complain about Agile being something they were already doing. And when I was working at Xerox, it was really nice, even though it was waterfall, to start getting the realization that having good contact with customers was a really good thing for my career. And when the bureaucracy just got so painful and all of that, to just get excited about Agile as a software developer, and then seeing people complaining about it, I got the chance to jump on a startup that was spun out of Xerox PARC, and we had to be Agile. We had to have close contact. We had to have empathy with each other. You don't have a choice. And any product that I don't know that I've seen, that those early teams that really managed to find some success, they either have like really good customer representation so that the team all just goes along and they have that empathy and they do the work that's needed. But it was so fascinating when we started moving forward and they wanted to organize the chaos of the small, do everything. Divide and conquer just seemed like a really good strategy. Then you start siloing everyone, and then you start having these areas of expertise where people have their domains which they've mastered and which they can't really communicate with each other anymore, and the trust fails. And so it's interesting coaching technical teams, how much often technical teams don't get that awareness of the value of customer contact, don't actually see that some of the people who make progress up the chain and become really effective often do it as a result of doing quality assurance and having that contact with the customer and getting that empathy and being able to make a difference. But it's just people get so trained out of this, and they think they can just sit at their desk and sit at their computer and just feed me my commands. And it's funny that if someone breaks out of that as a developer, and I experienced this myself, I got to the places in the startup environment of having like really good customer feedback, really good feedback. I was even won an award for it. And the people who were representing the customer did not like that. And they systematically destroyed that relationship. It was painful.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely see this. I see this protectiveness. I see a concern actually among people with the title product owner. I've seen some great product owners, product managers. The successful teams that I've been on would not have been successful without having this integrated customer, people representing the customer, regardless of the title. And I've also seen people who were afraid that if somebody else did this, they wouldn't have a job anymore. And partly, I think that's because they weren't doing much other than trying to tell the team what to do. They weren't actually spending their time to go out and understand the customer and really create that connection. because that takes a lot of time and it's really hard. I've got see a couple more hands up. I just want to expand the conversation a little bit to talk about different types of development, because we're not all doing the same thing. We're not all building software for a vertical market, which sounds like what Scott was talking about. We're not all building software for in-house. There's different approaches to this, and people put their hands back down. I hope you'll raise your hands again, because I still want to hear your thoughts. But I also want to bring in this element of how is what you've experienced different, or how much does that context of the type of software development that you're doing make a difference for what you've seen work or not work? I think for extreme programming was sort of the early Agile method that captured a lot of attention amongst developers, and it was originally done inside of Chrysler as an internal in-house product. And that is different then. And so they could have their on-site customer actually was a customer. And that is very different than what you need when you've got, like Michael was saying, when you've got a whole cohort of people that you're representing, and paying too much attention to one could result in over-specifying your product. Looks like Abdul has a comment. Abdul, welcome.
Hi, morning, everyone. So talking about talking to customers, again, developers to talk to customers, I've had a challenge with that. And where I've had success, and obviously people are different, so some developers take to this really easily, and it's not just job security, sometimes it's personality as well. But where we've had success in getting developers to talk to customers, it's been amazing to see how what they thought product managers had said they wanted and what the customer actually wanted was different. And this is in the same organizations. I'm talking about going to talk to the easy customers like the finance team or the marketing team and things like that. So, what do you want? And how should this thing work? Really great questions. And then they'd come back and say to me, yeah, this what we discussed at the planning meeting, that's completely different, and this is what we're going to be doing, and this is the feedback we're giving. And so those things work really well. One of the other things I wanted to touch on in that I had an experience with, and this was in a company that was started by a couple of lawyers to tackle a problem in the legal field. And as you'd expect, a lot of founders are people who are trying to solve problems that they've experienced in their work. And this is really great. They were in the legal field. They experienced the problem. They knew exactly how to solve it. And they started this company, and it was successful. But what was interesting to see is that the software is a socio-technical system, that once you've got this software out there and people are using it, their problems change. Like you've solved a problem, you've actually introduced is maybe the wrong word, but you've changed the problem. So where manual document management was an issue and now we've automated it, and that looks great. We've solved that problem, but now you've got to deal with the problem of there are tons of documents. What's my search capability? Or, how do I archive old matters and things like that become an issue, which you never thought of originally. More than that, the founders never see that problem. So you've really got to go back to the customers to be able to see that problem, the new problems that have happened.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point. I think, like you said, it's not so much the software is creating problem. I think it's peeling away a layer of problems and allowing you to see the new problems underneath it. Thanks very much for your comments, Abdul. Scott's got another comment. So Scott, welcome back.
Yeah, I have about 30 years of software development experience, most of that in some sort of leadership role. And I was coming off of my first successful Agile development, which was similar to what I talked about before. It was an application for a company for sale to our customers. Because that was fairly successful, and it was unsuccessful multiple times before that. I got pulled into the only internal software development project that I've actually worked on. I was there for roughly 3 years. And what this was, again, we had highly technical engineered systems, which was big mechanical devices with complex electrical control systems and complex software. And how our sales guys figured out what a customer needed and then trying to configure that thing and eventually get it into manufacturing so they got the right thing was beyond me, and was actually a problem because things were constantly changing. And so we needed software that would help our sales guys with that. And so think of this as just like if you're gonna configure a Ford Mustang, right? You go out to Ford's website and you start to pick and choose, and it builds up the pricing for you. And if you choose this, it says, oh no, you can't have that unless you choose this pack. We needed that same thing. And so that was an off-the-shelf package, but we interfaced the front end with Salesforce and then the back end with SAP. So it was a massive development effort. Suffice to say, when we put that team together, I wanted to bring some of my Agile learnings into that project. And we had a new VP of IT at the time. And when I talked about this, his response was, no, we're IT. We don't do Agile. We only do waterfall. Clearly, that's the best way to do it. Yeah. So here I am. Now I'm stepping back in time 3 or 5 years from all my learnings. And so I said, I have to figure out some ways to kind of almost quietly or secretly bring some of this stuff into it. And one of the first things I did is I implemented daily stand-up, although I didn't call it that, right? And so here we had a team of probably 25 to 50 sales guys that were our customers that were sitting in the same building with us. We actually created that team. Like, you're part of this development team now. We want you to figure out what the quote should look like and all that sort of stuff. And so you had a few people that would attend these daily stand-ups, and it ended up being more and more. And only a couple months into this project, we'd have 25 people sitting around in a stand-up, most of them listening to what was going on, and a handful of representatives kind of reporting out more than anything. And not very long after that, the team elected to have those twice a day, like once in the morning and once in the afternoon. And I know for sure most of those people would not have talked all day long, even though we were in the same 2-story building, had we not made them get together a couple times a day. And that VP came to me probably after only 3 or 4 months and said, I don't know what's going on in that project, but I've never seen a team develop software so quickly. And it was only because we were showing our work, like we weren't hiding anything. So that's just going back to your question about having customers internally. I mean, it is hugely valuable if you have people who you're developing it for who are sitting right alongside you. It was amazing.
Yeah. What strikes me about your story is that the sales folks obviously cared so much about this product. Like, they needed it to work well. They needed it not to get in their way. And I've seen people who have a lot of cynicism about software development, and their reaction is to just sort of back away, say it doesn't matter. And then, of course, they're disappointed with what comes out of it. But what I love about your story is they got involved, and that made a difference.
And that's one of the ways we sold it, right? We said, look, this is for you. I mean, if you want your life and your job to be easier, this is your opportunity. We don't know what we're doing here. We're just taking input from you. And I mean, they jumped in full board. It was great.
I think that is actually what you're describing there. I think it's one of the key skills in people who are more senior on an Agile team, people who are acting in a leadership capacity in some way, regardless of whether or not they have that title, is to actually go out and evangelize the importance of being involved, sharing what's going on, getting feedback, saying, hey, we really need and care about what you have to say, and then acting on that too, as of course. Thank you very much for your comments, Scott. Jordan has something to say. Jordan, welcome.
Yeah, hello. So I started out in my current organization about 9 years ago in a DevOps position. And at the time, DevOps was a new term that not a lot of people knew. I had to Google it when I was looking at the job description. What is this thing? And it was really interesting because our team at the time was about 10 people and had just recently gone through an Agile transition. Was only maybe a year and a half, I think, into that. And it was a really interesting time because trying to define the customer for a brand new dev position, I was embedded inside of a software engineering team with a bunch of other software engineers, yet I wasn't writing the same type of software. So I had more of a specialist role. And so early on, the concept was the customers for and I was doing everything from infrastructure to CI/CD, pipelining, just the whole gambit, right? And it was the idea that the customer is the development team, the rest of the development team. And that was always created this friction that was really, really hard to reconcile, because it wasn't really clear, like, how do you actually define value? What does it mean to have a successful pipeline, or performant infrastructure, or this kind of stuff? And it wasn't until over a long period of time where we really started to say, hey, we had to expand as a team our concept of what software is. The software isn't just in this case, C# code, or whatever other technologies we're using at the time, isn't just that. The software is everything it takes to deliver the value to the customer. So that includes infrastructure, includes the CI/CD pipelines, includes the everything. And when that happened, that made the world of difference, because now all of a sudden, what ended up growing more and more DevOps, and then since DevOps has gone away, because my ultimate thing was, as a tangent, is that DevOps is not a job, it's a culture that is a part of Agile. You shouldn't have people with that title. But
a lot of enthusiastic responses to that.
Yeah, exactly. But I do think there's a place for people with that title, particularly when jobs are especially when you're getting started in an organization. It can really help to champion that cause. But eventually it should go away. But it really took the evolution, because now all of a sudden it made sense. Why are we writing this, this infrastructure this way? And what it even did is it freed some of the engineers up to say, oh, I guess I should probably figure out how to write some of this infrastructure, or write in this case, AWS, the cloud formation that deploys or whatever, because it is fundamental to how my software works. And understanding the end goal of the customer and the value we're trying to give to the customer, all the way down to the infrastructure layer, may make a big difference in why you choose one particular infrastructure pattern, or one particular way of doing your pipelining, a release cadence or whatever, may really be impactful of those things. So for me, it was really the importance of thinking holistically and expanding your mind around who that customer is relevant to. It's not just the narrow people who are designing the software, but it's everyone who is in any way connected to the process.
Well, what I love about the story you just told is you're talking about a platform team, and we see, I don't remember who was mentioning it earlier, but we've really moved away from this model where I saw actually a comment on Twitter. If you really want success, you need to have a team who can deliver directly to customers without any dependencies. That's going to just rocket forward, because it's all these dependencies between teams that tends to cause problems. It's incidentally one of the reasons I'm interested in fast fluid scaling technology, because you can have more people working as a single team. But in modern development, it's very, very unusual to see one team that has that ability, the ability to deliver directly to customers without any dependencies on other teams in the organization. What I loved about your story there was that, yes, you are a platform team, but what you were trying to do is dissolve your platform team. And it's usually the other way around. People tend to accrete their power and make themselves more of a bottleneck rather than less. So thank you very much for sharing, Jordan.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. I think this is probably a good spot to stop. Thank you all very much for joining us today. The next time we are going to be looking at refactoring, and I'm very happy to say that Martin Fowler is going to be our special guest for the session. Martin Fowler is, of course, the author of the seminal book, Refactoring, Improving the Design of Existing Code. Huge influence on the industry. It's going to be a great session. I'm really looking forward to having him. The Discord discussion starts Monday at jamesshore.com/s/AOAD2 Discord. And the live session with Martin Fowler is on Friday the 15th at 8 a.m. Pacific as normal. That is it for today. Thank you once again, everybody, for your participation. A lot of great conversation today, and I really appreciate all of your participation. So thanks again, and I'll see you next time.